I'm Mariayah Kaderbhai, and welcome to this BAFTA Masterclass with actor Sacha Dhawan. Just a little bit of housekeeping at the top. We do have closed captioning this evening, so if you require it, there will be a button on your screen. There's also a Q&A function, so please do ask questions, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. We have seen Sacha on our screens for almost 20 years. You would have seen him in Bradford Riots, The History Boys, Last Tango in Halifax, Mr. Selfridge, Iron Fist, Doctor Who, and currently in The Great on Channel 4. We're going to talk about process, identity, life as an actor in the UK. So welcome, Sacha.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is really exciting. What an honour.
We are going to start at the beginning. You started out really young in the industry. You started out as a child actor, I believe. Was acting or did you fall into it as a child, or is it something that was always something you wanted to do?
I always enjoyed performing. I remember at a young age, my parents would always get me and my siblings up at family parties or family events to perform, do something, anything at all. They gave us complete freedom, even as silly as it was. And my go-to was doing Michael Jackson impersonations. And obviously my parents would get up and sing as well. My dad was a huge Elvis fan. My mum sings beautifully. And I just loved it. I loved, in a way, the validation from family. You know, they would be laughing at me, cheering me on. And I just got a buzz for it. And my mum signed me up to some dancing classes around the corner from our house. And I just loved it. It was tap dancing, I must say. And every year we would do a performance, and eventually the dancing teacher said, he's kind of got two left feet, but he should think about acting and link me up with a children's agency in Salford. And things just progressed from there. And I remember being on set for the first time with a bunch of people from so many different backgrounds, and we were making television. It was so intoxicating and addictive, and I don't think the feelings ever gone away. So yeah, that's how it started.
Getting the bug really early on. You have I've been looking at everything that you've been doing, obviously watching for many years, but just before this masterclass, I really deep dived into all the work. You've been consistently working for the last 20 plus years. So even as a child and moving forward, how was that as a child to begin with, always consistently looking for work? Is that something you wanted to do, or did that just naturally progress?
Well, I think as a child, I was 12 years old, and bear in mind, at that time I was trying to juggle life and education as well. And things just happened. I just take it as it comes, which is something now I wish I still was able to do. I worry more so now. But in saying that, I was just taking life as it comes and not really thinking about what I wanted to do until I was forced to have a break. I say a break, I just stopped working actually, even though, you look at my credits, I've worked consistently, but throughout that time I've had chapters where things just stopped. And at the time I was like, oh God, it's over. But actually those times have been blessings, because it's given me time to really think about what it is that I want from the industry. I think when I was a kid, I just loved, in all honesty, staying in different hotels, messing around with the crew. But my first break, as it were, was when I finished college. And I was like, so used to just going from job to job, and things just stopped. It went very dry as all my friends went off to university, and I was working with my dad for a while. He kindly offered me a job, and I hated it, to be honest. I was like, I should have gone to college. I should have gone to university. But it really made me, it was such a blessing. It really made me think about what it is that I want from the industry. What type of characters do I want to play? It's when I also started writing as well. When I was working with my dad, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I started doing a lot of poetry performance as well. And I say that because I got quite comfortable kind of being in Manchester, going to different acting classes, exploring the craft, sitting in Manchester Library, reading loads of different books and plays. And I mentioned the poetry because out of nowhere, this audition came up for the History Boys. And I hadn't auditioned for ages. And I remember being so nervous getting on the train and meeting Toby Whale and Nicholas Heitner and Alan Bennett, who I'd studied for my GCSEs at the National Theatre. And even Alan says to me to this day, I remember you walking in the room as if you'd just been in a tornado. And the poetry thing was, after I did my first scene, which didn't go very well because I was so nervous, I'd written a poem, which I had in my back pocket. And I asked Alan before I left the room, do you mind if I perform this poem? And I could see Toby Whale kind of going, oh no. But I did it and no one said anything and I got the job, which was great. But Alan had left me a note on press night because of the History Boys. And it said, I'm so glad you wrote the poem that day because that was what clinched the job. And it was an amazing feeling because it was then actually, that was like the breaks or the resting periods are really integral to the craft, really, as long as you appreciate the time and don't be trying to chase the next gig, as it were. Sometimes you need that time to sit and reflect.
Well, actually, I'm going to skip all the way forward and maybe kind of revisit that. Because we've spoken about this before, and I think it's really important because you've talked about kind of those resting periods. But having worked so much, kind of obviously when COVID hit last year, it kind of put a pause on, to begin with, kind of most filming work. Most of our lives kind of, to an extent, went on pause. And after playing so many different roles and so many kind of you flipping kind of characters as well, back and forth in every single role that you do, how did COVID affect you personally as an actor?
Yeah, it's kind of been really hard. It's been challenging, like for so many artists, but it's also been a bit of a blessing as well. I think, like a lot of actors, including myself, I've sometimes used the work or the other characters to hide behind, or as a way of not really confronting myself. And it's quite comforting doing that. And actually, COVID meant that everything stopped. I couldn't really look for that fix, as it were. And I've always said to myself, I'm going to stop and have a break to kind of deal with some of these demons a little bit. And also, you know, identity has always been playing on my mind a lot, and I've never really given myself the time to do it. And then when I do, a job comes in, and I always worry that, oh, if I don't take the opportunity, it may never come again. But actually, I've realized, and what COVID's, you know, taught me to do is to take those breaks, take back the power. Because it was a blessing, and it was uncomfortable because it meant that I had to face certain things. You know, I've talked quite openly about anxiety and mental health, which is very difficult to talk about. It still is. You know, it's difficult as well, coming from a British South Asian background and being male as well. We're not very good at talking about these things. Boy, it has empowered me so much. Talking about it, because I've realized, like so many other artists and people generally, that I'm not on my own with it. But why is there such a stigma attached to it? So in a sense, COVID has allowed me to really unpick all those things, and it's really empowered me as an artist in a way that I never thought it would. It's made me be more articulate. It's encouraged me to collaborate with other artists. It's made me focus more on what it means to be not South Asian, but British South Asian. And then going back to work again, you know, it was difficult because I had such a break, but I've just got a new lease of life in me. I feel like I'm less apologetic, and that's incredibly empowering, because I guess I feel like I've been conditioned just to be grateful that I've got a place at the table. But it's now very important for me to start thinking about when I'm at work, to look around me, not just the actors, but behind the scenes as well, and kind of really note the fact that there are only a very small handful, or if any, of people that look like me. So to have that time and now starting to unpick and be vocal about it without apologizing and calling some of that stuff out is, I've probably and genuinely felt the most empowered I ever have done.
Have you noticed that more now? Or have you always noticed that? And as you said, were you kind of, was it?
I think I've always noticed it, but been too afraid to say anything about it. I feel like there is a sense of conditioning where just keep your head down, don't ruffle any feathers. And I think that links back to my identity as a British South Asian artist, and my parents, who, when they came over from India, dealt with immense challenges to fit in. Some family members I know have got different names, which I've always laughed at. But actually there's a serious reason why that's happened. And I feel like the next generation, that's me, carries some of that. I'm a little bit afraid. I've kind of put my head down when I walk into rooms, and I don't want to be doing that anymore. I was born here, and just as good an artist as anyone else. But that is not the industry. It necessarily isn't just to blame for that. I think I have to look at myself personally as well, and really kind of go pat myself on the back and celebrate the work that I've done, because I've always felt that I need to be doing more. I need to be doing better. And therefore I don't really enjoy the ride as much. I can be too hard on myself, which is where I feel the anxiety arises from. And I know that I'm not the only person who feels like that, especially from the British South Asian community, where we're kind of conditioned that you've got to be not just good, but exceptional. The best.
Yeah. Okay? It's generational trauma in a way as well. And kind of so much, and I know that we've touched on this before, but the idea that the stories that we think that we tell or we know are not actually our stories, but they're our parents' stories. And so much of British kind of Asian identity actually is created through our parents' stories rather than navigating our own. And that's why sometimes it might be so difficult to see our own stories on screen, and why they might not exist, because we're forever perpetuating parental stories instead.
Exactly. And now, I mean, I've been sitting on this for years, but now I'm really taking the time to, I've been spending so much time playing other characters and unpicking them without knowing my own story, my own character, as it were. And now I'm trying to unpick that. And it is scary. And that's why in lockdown, I made the decision to start reaching out to other artists. Millie Bhatia, brilliant, Nikesh Shukla, an amazing array of different actors as well, not just to create work, but to share our stories. When we first connected a couple of days ago, there's this beautiful thing of an unspoken bond. We don't have to justify ourselves, we just get it. And that's incredibly empowering. And it's a great foundation to lay down to then build our own stories from. Like I said, by simply just connecting, going, hey, what's your story? Because it's amazing. Yes, our stories are different. We have so much in common. And being in an industry sometimes where I've not had the opportunity to do that in a tea break with a fellow crew member or an artist and go, hey, our parents, or what's our stories, our cultural specificity, I've not been able to do that. But yet I don't know why I've been so afraid to do that, to connect with other artists. That's why I feel, in a sense, the British South Asian community, in all honesty, lag behind the Black community, for instance. My friend was showing me a WhatsApp group of 400 artists from the Black community. We don't really have that. It's almost like we're conditioned to be almost in competition with one another. And I think that we need to challenge that a little bit.
You mentioned just now one of your collaborators, Nikesh Shukla, who you actually made a short with last year during lockdown, and it is available on YouTube. So and if people can Google it after this. But I just want to kind of talk to you a little bit how that came about, because I'd never seen you be that person before. And it was so honest and kind of refreshing, but great. And I just want to, if you can talk us through how that short came about.
Yeah, I think what's great right now, which years ago we didn't have the access to technology. So in terms of being able to create your own content, now we can literally film stuff in our bedrooms. I can be talking to you. Yeah, you know, it's amazing. So there's a real opportunity there. There's an opportunity to collaborate with other artists. So I've heard loads about Nikesh Shukla. And so I just dropped him a message and I said, hey, we've got some free time. We should just chat. And it wasn't necessarily with the intention of creating something. It was just to basically share stories. And what came about from it was cultural specificity, but our stories weren't just defined by race. And what we were fascinated by was mental health, really. You know, how men aren't very good about talking about it, but more specifically or culturally specifically speaking, how the British South Asian community aren't very good either. But again, we wanted to try and tell the story in a way that wasn't the same kind of thing we kind of see of it kind of being so heavy. So we came up with the idea of kind of an original idea of it being like an Asian stand-up comedian and kind of coming at a very hard subject matter being completely wacky and huge, you know. And then we had Millie Bhatia, who's a brilliant director who works at the Royal Court, who's a friend of mine. She came on board and we collaborated on it. And it was really, really empowering. It was a small project, but one of the best things I've ever done because I was connecting with my fellow artists and there was that unspoken bond. And that is what's really at the heart of the piece for me. The performing part was great, of course, but the actual collaboration was, really special and has kind of, I've always wanted to be doing it anyway, but it's really given me the confidence to start producing and collaborating with other artists and doing my own work.
If we skip back through your vast filmography, kind of you have played, I mean, like, you know, there hasn't been a typecast or there hasn't been a specificity to genre or to period. How much of that was your decision making, and how much of it was, you know, a little bit of luck, or just was it a kind of, you know, this is, you know, I don't want to be stereotyped?
I think I've been very fortunate with the opportunities that have come my way. And I think having done a body of work helps sometimes, you know, skip the queue or get in the room because you've got a bit of profile. But I remember working in Los Angeles when the climate was very different then, and I was doing a show called Outsourced with an Indian accent. It was set in Mumbai, but we were filming in Los Angeles. And there was a lot of hype after Slumdog Millionaire. And I think I remember meeting with a huge US agency out there, and they were kind of looking for the next Indian comedy dude. And they looked at my show reel, but they were really confused. They didn't take me on because they're like, what are you? I think they wanted to kind of place me in a box. And I think that I'd always been sitting on that and felt really uncomfortable. Like I didn't want to be the token ethnic guy. I didn't want to be the geeky Indian guy. I wanted to be me. And I felt like that there wasn't room for me anywhere. I was like, where do I fit? Do I just do the Indian accent and do that? So I basically cut my ties with LA at that point and got a plane back once the show was cancelled. I didn't stay out there. And I felt like the UK had more scope. I guess I was more comfortable here. Felt like an environment that I knew well enough to, and I basically, as crazy as it sounds, which I totally believe is just putting it out in the universe. I said to myself, I don't want to be placed in a box. I really want to strive to play different characters and be seen just as any other actor. And also I had a huge passion for that. I know a lot of actors say, you know, we want to play different characters, but I really enjoyed like having a blank canvas, everyone kind of leaving me alone, and being in, like, I always have a room wherever I am, even in the house that I'm in now, where I just, it's like my safe zone, where I have my script and I paint like an artist, not literally, but I have a blank paper and I go, how will this character behave? And suddenly I found my own kind of process in doing that, and it worked. I started to get the work that I wanted to do and started to play those different characters, whether it be in a period setting or comedy setting or drama setting. And I've kind of built on that from there. But getting those opportunities gave me the confidence to take things even further. So, you know, being in period, playing a drug addict in Not Safe for Work, to then playing Davos and Iron Fist and learning martial arts, I was like, I can play all these different characters, regardless of my ethnicity and regardless of how I look. I can play someone really damaged and I can play someone incredibly intimidating, as long as I'm given the space to kind of, this space that I'm talking about, to kind of really focus on it. And yeah, I think that's kind of how it all evolved when I left America.
So kind of, you mentioned kind of Iron Fist there, kind of is that going back to America in a way?
Yeah.
Was that, were you nervous about kind of re-entering the world?
Yeah, I was incredibly nervous, but I felt that coming back to the UK, which I always do whenever I go and work away, as soon as the job finishes, I come straight back to the UK. There's something about it, it kind of grounds me, not just in my process, but also with, oh, are you still there? Oh, there you are.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I think my internet dropped. Sorry for everyone.
No, don't worry. Yes, I was nervous about going back to the States for Iron Fist, but like I said, the UK has always been an important base for me, to kind of regroup, as it were, focus on my craft a bit more, but also connect with life and my friends. But I felt like I was in a stronger place mentally and also with my craft before I went back to do Iron Fist. But it was incredibly nerve-wracking, only because I was also having to do martial arts as well, and I hadn't done a single lesson in my life, and I lied in the audition and was trying to throw flying kicks and stuff, and you know, but it worked, and it was an amazing job. And I thought, wow, we can play characters. You know, we can be versatile, and we can be attractive as well. We're all sometimes seen as not being, you know, hot or good looking. We're always on the sidelines a little bit, and boy, we're so beautiful, male and female. And yeah, I really want to be kind of leading that a little bit more and having more confidence in myself.
That is something kind of I've been looking at more recently. There's kind of so much of British South Asian talent. They're all great roles. They're great actors and they do play great things, but it is it's being allowed to be the lead, or being allowed to kind of be the number one on the call sheet. That's still, I think, a step that needs to happen.
It does.
You know,
but you know, I've realized as well is I've always relied on the industry to do that for me. And I guess I've kind of been like, oh, like I said, I'm lucky to kind of get my place on the table. But what's stopping us from building our own tables? Especially right now, it couldn't be more of an exciting time to do that, which is why I'm making much more of a conscious effort to not rely on the industry and connect with so many different artists. And you're right. There's a wealth of amazing talent out there who just haven't been given the opportunity. And those, including myself, who are in a fortunate position, we need to help get those artists on the ladder, because things are going to change. And that's just not just in front of the screen, but also behind the screen as well. It's so important. You know, I'm still on sets and I talk to my fellow actors about it, and we do kind of go, it's such a shame when, on screen there are actors, artists of color, but you look behind the scenes, which the audience don't say, it's still very white, I won't lie. And we do need to be changing that, and also encouraging talent to come into the industry as well. There's still a stigma attached that it's not a proper job. And it is. It's the entertainment industry is such a big industry. It's huge.
Yeah.
It has a real impact on people's lives as well.
Do you think kind of you'll try your hand behind camera? Have you got aspirations to write and direct?
I think I've written a little bit. I am not very good at it. I'd love to direct though. That's one thing I'd love to do. But my passion is development. I really love that. As an actor, especially now, schedules are so tight. You don't really have enough time to develop stuff, and you're almost like the last piece of the puzzle, as it were. And I think it's very important to have that development. I have a huge passion for it in terms of developing ideas, but it also is important as well to kind of have that control, as it were, or to be an exec producer, because you then get to have a say contractually about how your sets look and how the stories are told, which we lack sometimes. And sometimes we have people who aren't best fit trying to tell our stories, and then there isn't enough time to try and change that, and then you're kind of lumped with it a little bit, or you're too frightened to challenge it, you know.
Have you ever had a role where you have been brought on early in the process, so kind of had space and room to develop?
I haven't, but in saying that, with Doctor Who, I'd worked with Matt Strevens before on Adventure in Space and Time, and he is he is an amazing human being and very supportive. And so with the Master, or the Master, my northernness, he was really good about getting me on board early to try out some ideas. And I felt like with Chris as well, that we were able to develop the character a little bit. And I had access to both Matt and Chris really early on to develop and chat about ideas. And that was incredibly liberating. And it meant that I felt like I did my best work as well, because a lot of the work was already done, if that makes sense. So there wasn't the need for a lot of discussion on set. And that felt very collaborative. And it also gave me a lot of confidence. And I feel like if you don't have that kind of environment, you're sometimes afraid of being bold, and because you're worried it might be wrong. And then you go home and you're like, oh, I just wish I'd maybe pushed it a little bit. But yeah, developing and collaborating gives you, like I said, that sense of confidence as well. Getting
the call for Doctor Who and the Master, was that kind of one of the most exciting days of your life, or was it fraught with a tiny bit of tension as well?
Well, it's fascinating because it was around that time where I was like, I'm going to take some time out. I was suffering from really bad anxiety, and was really afraid of talking to anybody about it. But I do remember when the call came in, I was doing a play reading at the NT studio. And as life has it, Peter Capaldi was in that reading. So strange. And on my lunch break, I got a call saying, would you be interested in playing the Master? I was like, my head exploded, but it also exploded in a way like, oh my God, am I in the right frame of mind to be doing this right now? But I couldn't say no to it either. But it was one of those which people don't see as much. They kind of see the end result. But I know a lot of actors will vouch for this who've been fortunate enough to work on Doctor Who, but they are the most supportive crew I've ever worked with. They're so generous. The team behind it are great. And first and foremost, Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor is so amazing as the number one in the cast as the Doctor, because she cares for everybody. She has everyone's back. And I do remember her ringing me, and when we had a huge episode and big scenes together, and she rang me to say, I'm going to try and do it justice for you so you can do your best work. And I thought, oh my God, Jodie Whittaker, the Doctor, is calling me to give me this kind of support. It really got me through the job. It really did. And then I took some time out and But if it wasn't for the crew and the cast, it would have been very difficult for me. But they allowed me to do some of my best work given the circumstances.
What are you like kind of in Doctor Who or kind of other kind of, what are you like on set? So if you're playing that kind of villainous character, what are your methods? Do you kind of stay in character or what's your process?
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? I was chatting to another actor about this, actors really like to show off about their method, how they, and actually, I'll be honest, it's a tendency where there's a tendency where it's usually male actors demonstrating their craft. But I think one thing most recently that I've said to myself is just to kind of remember when I was 12 years old, and just remember that I'm an actor. I'm not trying to find a cure for cancer here. And don't overcomplicate it, and don't forget to have fun. And like when I was that 12-year-old, to play and be adventurous and explore, I think my process starts with literally like a blank canvas and not being afraid to kind of throw different colors at the palette. It was actually an actor called Malcolm Sinclair, again, a very dear friend of mine. I remember coming to him with a scene and being all over complicated with it. And he said, you just need to have fun with it. You need to strip it back and you can't go wrong with it. Like, have fun. If you have fun, the ideas will come. And I've always retained that a little bit. But in terms of when I'm on set, there's no real method. But if I am playing someone who's quite intense, I like to maybe keep to myself a little bit, because if time is so short and then suddenly you're like, okay, 3, 2, 1, you're going and you're kind of having a laugh, it's kind of quite hard to kind of get into that. But in saying that, if I am in a comedy or I'm playing something lighthearted and I want to keep loose, then I'm having a laugh with my fellow actors. It depends kind of the character I'm playing. I try and keep a vein of the energy of the character a little bit. But I think more importantly, I always ask myself, am I making an actor's decision because I want to show off in some sense? Am I trying to go, I'm trying to be clever? Because I realize when I do that, it doesn't ever quite land. Even if I'm playing a completely different character, I have to kind of really squash my ego out the way and always ask myself, am I being truthful? Am I being truthful to the story here? Regardless of what I'm trying to do, does it serve the story? Because many a times I'll go, I'm just showing off it. I need to strip it back. Keep checking in with myself, trying to be too clever.
You've been really honest and open and talked about kind of anxiety as an actor. If you have that on set, how do you then, have you got tricks to then remind yourself to have fun with it and remind yourself that it is fun?
Yeah, I do. I guess it's like two things really. I think it's important to talk about it, because as actors, we're always trained or taught what to do in front of the camera or on stage, but no one talks about what you do when you're on your own or when you're not working. And it's probably just as important, or if not more, than when you're working. And I think the thing that helps me, has started to help me, is just connect with life. Don't let life revolve around the craft, because it's not necessarily going to give you the happiness you need. Now, being with friends and family, really embracing the resting period makes me a better actor. But also talking about it openly has been a blessing, because you wouldn't be surprised by the amount of people that also then connected back to me and said, oh my God, I'm so glad you're talking about this, from actors to big producers, exec producers, people. I was like, oh my God, they're in positions of power. I thought they had loads of confidence. Everyone goes through it. And I think I'm starting to find the confidence now. If I am feeling a bit anxious, it's okay to just go to the director and say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit like this today. I think I've had a fear that I failed in some way by being open like that, but actually it's okay to talk about it. And actually going back to the great, I've been more vocal about it. If I'm having a bit of a day when I'm like, oh, I feel a little bit, just getting it off my chest it's okay, and also telling myself it's okay to mess up. It got to a point where I was afraid to even make mistakes in takes, because I was like, oh, you've messed it. But actually, you need to do that. You need to get out of your system. I think this thing we were talking about before about identity is the fear of failure, striving for perfection. And I think it does link to being, British South Asian in a sense, and our conditioning of afraid to fail, and we need to succeed, and we need to challenge that stigma, because from failure, great things happen. And that's something I'm trying to teach myself.
We've got so many questions, so let me see if we can go through some of them. John Cook has said, I love your portrayal of the Master in Doctor Who. It feels like a fresh new approach while retaining who the character quintessentially is. Did you research previous portrayals in preparation? And if so, what did you take from them?
So I started my whole kind of laying the foundations of the Master by looking on Wikipedia.
We're all the best researchers.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah. And just kind of getting the basic facts and stuff. And then I started to watch very small snippets of other people's performances, and then I immediately stopped. And actually what I needed, which is what I was given, was Matt and Chris basically said to me, you have complete ownership of this. Take the facts and stuff, or they kind of said, this is what you need to know, and that's it. And it gave me complete freedom. So in a sense, I approached it like I would with any other character. And I think it was the best approach, because I would have mimicked what other actors had done. And I think I would have overcomplicated it a little bit, and also been completely intimidated by the universe, and it would have maybe held me back a little bit. But by approaching it like I would with any other character, I found suddenly, especially once I did that first plane scene and the reveal happened, I was like, yes, don't be afraid of taking risks here and being bold. I knew I was in safe hands and they'd rein me back if need be. But in a sense, the team encouraged me. So I had complete ownership of it. But then you're like, oh, I hope this lands. But like I said, I was also asking myself, as crazy as it was, that I'm in an alien world with fighting monsters, is it always truthful in this environment? And you can't ever go wrong with that, even if you're playing crazy characters. And luckily, thank God, it landed.
Okay. So Ellie Chapman's asking, what is the greatest advice somebody in the industry has given you?
The greatest piece of advice was two people, actually. It's a great casting director. I won't mention her name, but just in case, but she is brilliant. She's been incredibly supportive and given me some great breaks. But she said to me once, when I was putting so much pressure on myself, there was a lot of talk with the execs, am I right for the role? So it meant that with the table read, I had to come in costume, had to dress like the character, no one else did. And I kept saying to her after, like, am I going to be okay? And she just went, who gives a shit if they like you or not? This is the entertainment industry. We're not finding a cure for cancer here. Don't be so hard on yourself. We're not trying to, it's not rocket science. And I've always retained that when suddenly I put so much pressure on myself. And like I said earlier, is don't be afraid to be playful. There's a sense of, like, we're so lucky as actors that we get to kind of retain the child in us and get to play. So it's always important to remember that. And the other thing was, like I mentioned earlier with Malcolm Sinclair, is, we kind of overcomplicate stuff a little bit and we're trying to be too clever. Is just, like I said, like, have fun and see it as like a blank canvas. And you, as an actor, enjoy the process of throwing colors at the palette and building your own picture. I think I've always retained that, and it's felt very kind of, I think it's made me less worried about what people think, and actually it's put me at the forefront of it, if you know what I mean, in terms of the craft, in terms of I have my own control here. This is what matters. It's like that moment when sometimes when you're filming, whether it's on stage or you're on set, there's a lot happening, and sometimes there is a lot of bullshit happening, I won't lie. But there's an amazing feeling when the sound rolls, the camera rolls, it's like turnover, sound speed, and action, and you're in control. No one can do anything when no one can interfere or get in your head when that camera rolls. And that's a really beautiful feeling. I think it's something I always try and retain. And yeah.
Well, kind of that leads onto this question a little bit in terms of kind of throwing colors and creating your own palette for someone. Dan Joseph's asking, how does playing a real life person, Waris Hussein, in Adventure in Time and Space, differ from when you're approaching someone that's completely fictional?
Yeah, it's it's quite intimidating because you want to do that person justice, but yet, like with Satnam Singera, Waris Hussein, you God, you really want to do them justice, because their stories are so amazing and they represent so much as well for all of us. But yet, your all the stuff that you need is there. You can, the wealth of material. With Satnam, I got to meet his family. I went to his work. I really got to know him. As with Waris Hussein, I got to spend a lot of time with him as well. So yeah, you get to see how they behave in their kind of tics or mannerisms, but you get to know their personal story as well, which makes it all the more kind of special. Those projects, particularly Boy With The Topknot, Adventure in Space and Time, have been very dear to me. Yeah, you want to do it justice, but you feel in some sense that you're carrying a part of history as well. And it's really nice. It's really nice to be able to do that. Even though initially I was quite scared about doing it, especially when I did the first read through for An Adventure in Space and Time, and Waris Hussein was sitting behind me, and it's the first time he was hearing me play him. And I think he said to me, you are going to kind of posh and make him a bit more posh, right? Like, no, don't worry. Again, then too, it's amazing, isn't it? I've been able to play those characters, and yet they've also become really dear friends of mine as well. I never thought I could just drop Waris or Satnam a message like, hey, how you doing, buddy? It's so crazy.
A Boy With A Topknot, in a way, kind of, it does marry kind of the world that you were talking about, kind of living kind of in between identities and not having kind of finding it very difficult to find who your own identity is, because you often live between two worlds. But kind of with Boy With A Topknot, it's the very exploration of those two worlds. How was it playing him, and did you have to confront something in yourself?
Yeah, well, initially I avoided the audition altogether. I mean, I loved the book. It was amazing. And I just they kept saying, would you be up for auditioning? And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to. I think I was in that mindset of not wanting to play Indian characters, as it were. And I think it was because I was avoiding something in myself. I think for so many years, I know that we've talked about this, I've been trying to fit into one camp or the other, trying to be more British, trying to be more Indian, and feeling uncomfortable in either, and actually not accepting that space in between, because it's often felt confused. And if no one else is really celebrating that space, you're like, well, I don't want to be talking about it. But Boy With The Topknot allowed me to do that through Satnam Singera. His story it's beautifully captured in that space, which is often seen as being confusing. But it was the first step in allowing me to kind of talk about those things. And, there's a scene in Boy With The Topknot where I had to learn a whole monologue of Punjabi, and I don't speak Punjabi. And, that's something I've been so embarrassed about. And putting that on screen was quite intimidating, but yet also really kind of empowering in a sense, because I was going, this is who I am, and it's okay. You can actually have the best of both, as opposed to it being confusing.
We have so many questions, and I'm glad a lot of them are coming onto the great, because that's what I want to talk about. So Thais Alves Batista saying, you're working the great as Count Orlo is simply excellent. It is. He's one of my favorite characters. How do you feel about doing such different characters as Orlo and the Master?
Oh God, it's that's kind of when you're like, those times when you're in kind of those resting or down periods, and you're questioning everything, and you're thinking, I I want to be able to play different characters. You know, am I going to have the opportunity to do that? And so, yeah, it's amazing to be able to go from like Davos, martial arts killer, to the master, to then the bookish Orlo, playing someone who is Russian head to toe, working opposite great actors. It's great, but it's a challenge as well, because it requires different skills. But you know, filming season 2 now, it's such a joy being able to get into that period costume. I'll take a picture when I'm dressed in all the garb and I'll send it to my mum and dad. You know, and I'll get a little message from my parents going, "Oh, ooh la la." You know, it's great.
It is. So the great, currently season 1 is on Channel 4. It's kind of very, very loosely based on Catherine the Great in Russia, and it's a beautifully absurd world that's been created by Tony McNamara, who co-wrote The Favourite. One thing you notice kind of about it immediately is obviously the script. It is punchy and rhythmic, and it hits certain beats. And how was it as an actor trying to kind of, it's like a masterclass watching it in a way, because it's just like how do they all do this, because it's fast and
initially when I had my meeting with Tony McNamara and our director of the pilot, Matt Shackman, who coincidentally I worked with on Outsourced 10 years ago. I think he was the one that was like, get this guy in the room, I've worked with him. But for the meeting, I kind of thought, oh, this is Catherine the Great, so I should know my history a little bit. And I remember kind of coming into the meeting trying to gauge the history and how accurate we were going to be with it. And I could see Tony shifting a little uncomfortably. And Matt said to me, "Oh, Tony's throwing the history out the window. He's not interested in the history." And that was really a great moment, because oh, this is exciting. I get to have complete ownership. I need to worry about the history. All I need to worry about is the world that Tony's creating. So even though it's period, there's I don't have to worry too much about the etiquette, as it were. And that's incredibly liberating. But yet there's an incredible amount of specificity. A lot of people think that because it's like the Tony's kind of comedy drama, that we get to ad lib a little bit or improvise, and it's complete opposite. I kind of see Tony first and foremost as a playwright, which he is. So his writing is so specific. So you have to learn it verbatim, because when you do, that's when the rhythm and the comedy lands. But it's quite a challenge to learn, because there is a kind of period tone to it, and it's not how I would normally talk. So mastering that is hard, but it's a lovely tone that we're seeing more of now, of that balance of comedy and drama, which I feel is more accurate to real life, to be honest. You know, finding the humor in the darkest of situations. And also
embrace. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, also embracing this completely diverse cast, and kind of, you know, culturally, physically, in every sense of the word, and kind of, it's still believable.
Yeah, it totally is. And you know, we sometimes worry, what are the audiences going to think? And I think we underestimate our audiences sometimes. I think as long as our audiences are being entertained and being told good stories, they shouldn't care who gets to tell them. And I think still the industry has a sense of conditioning and stuck in certain ways, which I do feel in the last, well, particularly this year, things are changing slightly. And it's certainly given me the confidence to contest it slightly, or feel empowered. Do you know what I mean? And also as well with the great, you know, it's diverse, but we also have some amazing directors as well, from different backgrounds, but also particularly female directors as well. Some who are established, some are new, and that's great as well. I think it brings a different kind of flavor to the show as well.
Just adds a richness, kind of, you know, different voices, and can always only be a good thing.
Yeah.
Faraz Khan is saying, hey, Sacha, what was the training process like for Iron Fist?
Yeah, so I didn't quite anticipate the training process. Casting just said once I got the job, they were like, "Hey, you should maybe think about getting some martial arts lessons," and that was it. So I did martial arts lessons in London with a great sifu over here. It was just brilliant. It was like a Shaolin monk. It was quite intense. And then I also had to beef up a little bit. So I did a couple of months training here, and then I worked with the stunt team in New York. Amazing talent. Like the stunt guys who do it for a living are amazing athletes and martial artists, but they also not only instilled the training, but also the practice. You know, martial arts isn't a sport, it is a practice. So in terms of the spirituality and all of that really helped with the character. So yeah, I did 2 months of training before I started filming, as well as training during the 6-month shoot. But the 2 months was really integral to lay the foundation. So it was like, I was there for about 5 hours every day doing either gym stuff or different types of martial arts. But again, it was that thing where I was like, it's amazing just how brilliant the human race is once we put our minds to it. Something I was like, okay, I've got the job now. And I was like, God, am I really going to be able to pull this off? But after the dedication to the training and everything and the help of the team, it was amazing being on set the first day and being able to suddenly you know the choreography and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing this. I am a British South Asian comic book supervillain. Yeah. Hell yeah. You know, it was amazing.
And that's what we need to see more of on screen. Yeah. Jamie Cowan is saying, how do you approach tailoring your performance style to different mediums? Film, TV, theatre, and the physical nature kind of the differences between all three of them.
Yeah, it's always good to challenge yourself with different mediums. It's very easy sometimes to kind of get stuck in one. I feel sometimes I get a tendency, or it gets quite comfortable being on screen. But actually, theatre for me is where I've really learned the craft, because you haven't got an editor there to kind of cut your performance. You haven't got the lights, the makeup. It's literally purely about performance theatre. And there's nothing like being in the rehearsal room. And I feel like once I've been on screen for a while, I'll come back into the theatre room and the director's usually like, right, okay, we need to unpick some of this kind of stuff that you've picked up along the way. You've become a little bit lazy. Need to start thinking about what you're doing. And also, it's a safe environment in the rehearsal room, which I wish we had more in TV actually, or on screen, to really collaborate and be bold and because there isn't the fear of failure. And I love that. You really feel you're building something together, especially when it comes to new writing. But it does require a different sense of technicality to not necessarily make your performance bigger, but it's making sure that it can fill a room. And I don't think that's just about being big necessarily. It's about, I feel like it requires more energy and more kind of conscious thinking to make sure that it's hitting the back of the room. And that's a really good, if you can move between those three, you're really exercising all your muscles all the time and your memory. I think it's really important. I mean, there's an actor in The Great that I totally look up to, and I've always been a huge fan of, is Adam Godley, who does that consistently, moves from theatre, stage, TV, film, and he's brilliantly alters his craft depending on which medium he's doing. But I try with screen, there isn't as much preparation time, but I do now try and allocate as much preparation time as I can, because it's almost like now with screen, people think, oh, you got loads of takes to do it, but scheduling is so tight nowadays that you only really get a couple of takes. So I like to try and come in and nail it if I can.
In theatre, what's the impact of the audience and performance? Is it kind of, is it a different kind of adrenaline?
Yeah, yes, we should definitely talk about that. Yeah, it's having the audience there is amazing. It's like this black hole of energy, and that feeling of when you've been in a rehearsal room, and even when you've kind of done the technical dress, as it were, until you get an audience in the room, it's kind of when you figure out what this play is. And it's an amazing feeling. Like I remember with the History Boys, we'd kind of been in the rehearsal room so long. I remember we were questioning, like, is this even funny? You know? And then when we did the first preview and we got an audience in, it hit us like, wow, we've got something really special here. And I think that's when my performance comes to life. It's not just because the audience is validating me, maybe it is, but it's the energy of having so many people in a room. And it's why now, not having theatre, whether it be me on stage or me in the audience, not having that it really takes something out of the craft. I think people underestimate the impact that has on us. It's really special. It's kind of it's theatre is really the foundation of me as an actor, and I never take it for granted. And I will always go back and do a play, because like I said, I become a better actor for it.
History Boys is kind of really obviously interesting example of kind of that, from that stage to screen, and kind of the rarity of taking so many kind of original cast to it. Kind of what was that like? And you know, you obviously talk about the process on stage, but did that shift when you moved to the film?
Yeah, I mean, what was great is Nick Heitner, who's been a great mentor for all of us, all the boys. He is now still. He directed, or has directed, some great films as well, so he knows the craft. So we were in safe hands. I think what was great about Nick at the time is he had the choice of making this huge kind of commercial film, and there was even a chance maybe that we would have been recast as well. But he was just he strived from the very beginning when they were adapting it to make it as truthful to the play as possible, and make sure that we were all in it as well. So I think with that one particularly, it still felt very truthful to the play, actually. And what was nice is all as guys, we knew each other so well. We didn't have to try too hard, because it just showed on screen. We'd already worked together for so many years. So the chemistry was just there. And I remember Nick saying to me, literally, Alan, when he handed in the screenplay for the History Boys, it was literally cut and paste. Like he'd cut bits out of the play and kind of stuck them on with sellotape, and then handed it over to Nick. So yeah, it was still a very truthful adaptation to the play, which I really respected. It meant that we made it for less money, but it felt that we were all part of it in a sense. Yeah.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. Let's Becky Gowrie, Sacha, in the roles you play, you truly give all of yourself. I see and am immersed in your characters and appreciate your energy. You said you like the idea of development. Would you consider creating something for yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. Firstly, it's kind of just really nice when you hear comments like that, because you're always you think, oh, I need to be, obviously I'm always going to strive to be better, but sometimes as actors, we don't take a moment to kind of go, hey, we're okay. I've done some great things, and this is why today has been really, really great for me as well, because tonight I'll go to bed and be like, oh wow, I've done some amazing work. I'm trying to remember what the question was now.
The development process.
Yes, more so because of, I think that I really want to start telling my own stories, and in terms of when it comes to being British South Asian, by telling stories that are culturally specific but not necessarily defined by race. We've got so much more to offer. Like I want to start exploring genre and different forms, but that still retain cultural specificity. And I think the cultural specificity is something that I've avoided because I felt like people aren't going to be interested in it. It's just that there isn't enough out there. So that's actually something that I am focusing heavily on, and I'm now starting to develop stuff. And I know it's going to be a long process, but I'm up for the long game. I know it's going to be a challenge, but I hope, like many actors who are in these fortunate positions, Dev Patel, Riz Ahmed, myself, you know, we all want to be using our platform to encourage new work and new mediums, regardless of whether or not I'm in it or not. But if I'm able to get it through the door, I think that's is incredibly empowering for me.
Well, our uniqueness is a kind of almost universal thing, I think. Sacha, thank you so much. I'm so sorry to the audience here. I know we've had about 100 questions and we couldn't get to them all, but thank you so much for listening. And Sacha Dhawan, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.